Hey, what's up guys? So we're going to be doing a Season 19 guide for the Rolands set dungeon. So let's go ahead and show off where it's at. We'll go ahead and go over a build, and then we're going to go ahead and show off the full completion of the set dungeon. So let's go ahead and get started. So first off, to access the set dungeon, you're going to want to go to Act 2, Chaldeum, and then the road to Arcarnus, which is going to be right here. And this one's actually super close. All you have to do is just walk straight to the left, and then here is where the set dungeon for Rolands is going to be at. So now that you guys know where it's at, let's go ahead and go over the build. So obviously you need to have all 6 pieces or Royal Ring of Grandeur, and let's go ahead and go over the objectives as well. So first off, as far as the objectives go, you have to hit 12 different enemies with a single sweep attack 7 times. Because Rolands is going to be a sweep attack build, it's really not that difficult to pull this off, but just basically group up the enemies. You'll see from the gameplay, and I'll talk a little about it when we go through the commentary of the gameplay, but pretty much that's really easy to do. The next one is to spend 300 Wrath in 10 seconds 5 times, and what you want to do is try to get some cooldown on some pieces of gear, or you can run Messerschmitts in the cube. But basically what you're going to try to do is utilize Akarat's Champion, the embodiment of power. That's going to give you extra Wrath regeneration, as well as your Laws of Valor. This is going to make it so you will actually reduce the Wrath cost of all skills by 50% for 5 seconds. So that's going to make things really easy. You'll notice in the gameplay there's times where I'll just basically hit nothing, and that's to proc the secondary objective of the set dungeon. And doing all the other objectives, just like every set dungeon, is to eliminate all of the enemies and then go ahead and complete either one of the objective so you can get the regular. But this will cover the mastery, which clears out everything. So let's go ahead and now go over the items that are going to make your life a lot easier. So first off, just like pretty much every set dungeon, the Illusory Boots are going to be your go-to boots. It just lets you ignore unit collision, so you can basically group up the enemies really easy for that first part of the objective, which is to hit 12 different enemies, and just makes your positioning much easier. So I definitely recommend these in the cube or just have them equipped. And then what I'm running is Echoing Fury. It doesn't have to be this one. There's a lot of other great options here, but to be fully in depth here, Echoing Fury's very good option. Yugioh can be good. There are elite packs, and that will reduce your cooldown, so you can keep up Akarat's Champion, which is going to let your Wrath regenerate a lot faster. That lets you to spam your sweep attack faster. But Echoing Fury makes me gain up to 75% additional attack speed, which makes that objective much easier to go ahead and complete. But there's not really anything that you're going to need that's very important here. Again, just kind of choose what you can have. Ideally, the Roland set is supposed to be utilizing a shield here called Denial, which increases the damage of your sweep attack, but most of the set dungeons are one-shotting things anyways. But if you do happen to have problems with one-shotting enemies, then Denial can be an option as well. But for the most part, there's not one item that really is required here. And then I'm just running the Royal Ring of Grandeur so I can still keep my captain set over here, which also reduces the cooldown of my build over here, just so I can again spam the Akarat's Champion. And I also want to mention Messerschmitts is another great option, which you might already have cubed for other builds, but it reduces your cooldown by 1 second when you slay an enemy, which again goes back to being able to keep up your Akarat's Champion as well as your Laws of Valor up, and that allows you to again meet those conditions for the objective of spending 300 Wrath in 10 seconds 5 different times. For our build, I basically just got whatever I had as far as just rolling the items. I didn't re-roll stuff on the Roland set, but pretty much if you can get cooldown reduction, ideally that's the only thing that really matters. Having resource cost reduction doesn't really matter because it's just spending the resource. If you happen to have the golden flens over here, this is the set item that would be good with Rolands, because it makes it so sweep attack restores 6 Wrath for each enemy hit. If you can have this, this is ideal, but if you just happen to have it in the cube, whatever, it doesn't really matter. For the shield, I would recommend not to having the Ivory Tower, because the enemies will actually eliminate themselves via the block mechanic, so don't have anything that would like do additional damage, because you want to group up the enemies and then actually be able to hit all of them with, of course, the first objective. What I'm running is the Hell Skull. It doesn't really matter what you're running. I'll mouse over my gear, but for all intents and purposes, this is actually basically just a Valor build that I just kind of really quickly made into a Rolands build, just so I can go ahead and give you guys that content to complete this set dungeon. But there isn't really anything super important. As far as the build goes, the only thing that's going to be important is going to be Accurate Champion. That's going to allow you to have that extra Wrath regeneration like I mentioned. This thing is really important, as well as being able to have your Laws of Valor, the Unstoppable Force, that makes it so it reduces the cost of all Wrath skills by 50%. That basically just lets you spam and attack super fast and go full Recklessness. It technically goes against, in one sense, the build where you're trying to spend as much Wrath as possible, but because the attack speed is so fast, sometimes you'll just run out of Wrath, and this can kind of help with that. But it doesn't matter if you don't happen to have this. This one is important because this increases your Wrath regeneration, while this one is reducing the cost of it. Again, it just lets you spam a little bit more. It kind of helps out with the objective. But those are the only things that I would consider important. Mobility is also kind of nice to have because the set dungeon is relatively large. So if you are running out of time, which will probably be the most difficult part of this dungeon, is actually completing it within a reasonable time frame. So endurance can be great if you happen to utilize Steed Charge. Falling Sword can also be another option just to, again, traverse the map a little bit faster. You'll see in the gameplay that there was just 1 or 2 enemies at the very end. This was actually my first try, and I like to show off my first try because it makes that cool little animation when you go ahead and complete the Conquest. But as far as swoop attack, there really isn't anything that's going to be really good in terms of being able to really do anything. Maybe you can try to use swoop attacks because it's enemies that are caught in the swoop attack are pulled towards you, but nonetheless you'll hit them anyway, so it doesn't really matter that you're grouping them up a little bit better for the second sweep. I just went ahead and threw this on. It doesn't matter. Again, whatever you have for your element, maybe in your bracers, this could be another option, but there's nothing that's too important in this. I ran Condemned Vacuum. I tried to utilize it, but again, it doesn't really matter. I'm running Heavenly Strength because I'm utilizing the Golden Flints. Lord Commander, again, just for the ability to spam my horse, kind of makes it a little bit nicer. The Righteousness increases your maximum Wrath by 30, so this just helps you try to complete one of the objectives. And then Long Arm of the Law, which makes it so you can keep up your Unstoppable Force over here with Laws of Valor for a little bit longer. But now that we went over the full build, let's go ahead and hop right into the gameplay of the set dungeon. Alright, so hopping right into the set dungeon. Also want to mention, if you are doing this set dungeon, definitely remove the follower. The follower can basically have unit aggro. I end up dismissing him halfway through the game. But you can see I'm just letting the enemies kind of pile up, utilizing those illusory boots so I can ignore unit collision. It makes things so much easier. Again, that's one of the best boots to have in the cube or equipped for pretty much every single one of the set dungeons. But anyways, so what you'll see me do right now is I'm trying to complete that secondary objective where I'm spending 300 Wrath in 10 seconds. So there it is. Success, I spent the 300 Wrath. You have to do that multiple times, and so we'll do that multiple times in the gameplay here. It kind of does waste time, but make sure you still happen to have the Roland set activated where you're going to get that additional attack speed. I'm also having, it's that little buff of the little eye. It shows that my Echoing Fury is giving me up to 75% bonus attack speed. That's how I'm able to attack super fast and complete the objective much easier, because sometimes it can be kind of a task to spend the 300 Wrath for some builds. But for the most part, the objective of hitting the 12 enemies is super easy. Because a lot of these other objectives require you to hit a lot more. The Rolands one is a little bit generous with the amount of enemies required to be hit. Once again, we're trying to activate that objective over here. You can see I'm really close. Right now where it says 250, 270, that number is the buff over here, where we're trying to spend all of that Wrath within that 10-second time frame. That indication is showing how much Wrath we have spent. So right now it's at like 110, 155, this one right here. I moused over it. So that's what we're trying to actually activate and get up to 300%. So right now you can see I'm so close to activating it, but there's no enemies to hit, so I'm unable to gain extra Wrath. So if you want to go ahead, instead of putting like Condemn and run something that can give you additional Wrath, by all means feel free to go and do so. But this was literally my first actual run in attempting of actually completing it here with this setup. So it's a really easy one, and the reason why I wanted to show my first one here, because there are a lot of other enemies. I started trying to do it faster, and I have it basically at an extra like minute or so, but I wanted to show this one off because there's a lot of times where, in specifically this cave area, for I don't know what reason, there's a lot of times where you'll see that enemies just wander off. There's a few enemies that just ended up wandering off. But I ended up dismissing my follower over here, and right now, once again, we're trying to spend that 300 Wrath. Disable the follower on this one. I don't think it's going to really help out too much. Technically, the follower does give you extra resource generation, at least a Templar will, so it can kind of help out in one sense, but overall he's just taking the aggro. I'm like, you know what, I'm over it. So we've already completed both the objectives, which was to hit 12 different enemies with a single sweep attack 7 times, and we also completed the one where we have to spend 300 refs. So now it's just a race against the clock to go ahead and eliminate every single enemy for, of course, that mastery part of the set dungeon, but it's really not too difficult. It's just, again, sometimes there's one enemy that wanders off. Like, if I didn't eliminate the enemy, he might have just wandered off, went back to his post, and I would have to go back and find him. So just try to look over on the mini-map. There's not a very specific area here that I would say has like extra density to try to complete the objective. The objective to hit the 12 enemies is actually really easy. It's just mostly wandering off and clearing every single corner of this cave, because there's like enemies that will hide. And make sure you just look at that basic and mastery, where it says like complete 1 objectives and kill like X amount of enemies, but we're able to do both, and it's, again, not too difficult to eliminate most of the enemies on most of the objectives anyways. It's just sometimes you just have one monster or one little pack that wanders off and you just don't see it, so you have to backtrack, and we're at about a minute left over here. So again, once you complete the objectives, just utilize that horse and that falling sword just so you can move around the map just a little bit faster. And you can see I'm opening up my map so I can kind of find out where I have not gone. And I saw on the top left of the mini-map, or in the top right there's the mini-map, on the top left of the mini-map there was just that little group over there. And again, I'm just using falling sword to find out where the heck the last enemies are, and I see on my map over here I just didn't go to every corner. Again, because this area just has just a very large map, make sure you go ahead and open up your map to make sure you cleared out everything. And yeah, that's pretty much how you do it, and we'll pretty much wrap it up here in the next, like, well, we have to wrap it up in the next couple few seconds here, because otherwise we're going to go ahead and time out. You can see there's just 3 monsters here that kind of wandered off, or maybe I just didn't see them.
There seems to be a lot of standing about.
Okay, so anyways, there is indeed the entire completion of the set dungeon for Rolands. But there you guys go. Hopefully this video helped you guys out. And if you are new here and you do want to see other set dungeons, hit subscribe, turn that bell on. You'll see I'll cover every single one that is in Season 19. But that's how you complete the Crusader Rolands one. But thanks for tuning in, guys. And if you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And if you are new here and you want to see more Diablo, as well as other gaming content, subscribe, turn that bell, and you'll see more very soon. But thanks for watching, and have a good one, and I'm signing out. Peace.